I was friends with this other 6-year-old, and there was a specific few days where we ended up in his house down the road, whose parents were also gone all the time, and they were watching porn in the living room. It's all focused on that all the time, of like constantly having to prove or portray. And then all of a sudden your 6-year-old kid trauma affects the rest of the path of your life with this sexual bullshit. Like, I just feel this creature inside of me, right? It's just this like little dark creature. For me, when I got out of the military, it was like I couldn't figure it out. When I talked to my wife, when I was fucking things up constantly, it was like I just crying with her. Like, I just feel this creature inside of me, right? It's just this like little dark creature. And, that's just how I visualized it. But one, identifying that and then going, what caused this? Because I think that every one of us in the world, from the very healthy of us all the way to, the bent over fentanyl addict, in San Diego, the very specific memory of what somebody did to you or what happened to you, whether it was a collective over time or a very specific thing or a whole bunch of very specific things, but you know what it is, and you don't want to admit to yourself, that it's that started it, whatever the trauma is, whatever the things, you know what I mean? And it's different for everybody, but going then to that thing and spending time like looking at it, we don't want to, but just fucking something to put your head in place to then not just look at it, but go like all around it and go figure out like, yeah, that memory, that's it. For me, for example, there was one, and like sexual stuff's embarrassing for everybody to talk about. That's why it's one of the most sinister addictions, in my opinion, compared to like, you can say all day long, like I'm a drug addict, I'm like alcoholic, I beat my wife, I do this. Really hard for people, but it's also ironic because there's so much sexuality bullshit going on right now. It's all focused on that all the time, of like constantly having to prove or portray or, explain your sexualities, and even now gone to the extent of just displaying it openly in an effort to make it feel normal, because your subconscious, your ego is like, already it's inappropriate, some of these things you see. Like, I can't, and I have no judgment against anybody's sexualities, but I'm from California, I can't take my kids to San Francisco during Gay Pride Month, and it's not because of the sexuality, it's because of all the traumatic sexual shit they're gonna see, out in public. And it's just not okay, but it's also not going like anything against your sexuality. It's just, but for me, just because it's hard to talk about, I'm gonna use it as an example. One of my earliest traumas was, my mom was working a lot. My dad, so that's part of the childhood story. My dad was in the Air Force. So then when she remarried, I became a military kid. So I'll go back to that. We moved around a lot, and that became another kind of trauma. Super cool, but also a little bit of a trauma. A big trauma. But back to that thing, I had a good childhood after my mom got married. I really feel overall like, man, I had a great childhood, but there was these little things because they were just doing their best. He was working, she's working, and I had freedom around the neighborhood. We lived in Japan at the time. Got stationed there. Super cool. We lived there for 4 years. But I had free floating reign around the whole neighborhood as a 6-year-old, right? So I was friends with this other 6-year-old. And there was a specific few days where we ended up in his house down the road, but he had older siblings, 12, 13, 14, whose parents were also gone all the time. And they were watching porn in the living room. So now I go here, I'm a 6-year-old, and they, I see it with kids now, they influence each other. They go, hey, they think it's a good idea to take the 6-year-old and go like, look at this. And you're like, and I'm sitting there looking at this scene that I remember this is what I'm saying with what it is. I remember the very specific things that I was watching in that scene, not knowing what the fuck they were. To go, I don't know what it is, but it's fascinating in some way. It's like this, like something
Yeah.
You know, and then all of a sudden you're a 6-year-old kid, trauma, right? Affects the rest of the path of your life with this sexual bullshit, right? That you saw too soon. Because you don't even need to be thinking about it until your body matures into that, which was the original purpose
Yeah.
for sex in the first place, is to reproduce. And like, you know, yeah, it feels good. Whatever, we figure that out. That's an intimacy thing, but not as 6-year-old. You're supposed to be playing, you know? You're supposed to be looking at bugs and coloring, you know? So in one of my plant medicine experiences, I was able to go back to this very closely and like almost float around it like a spirit and go, holy shit, I'm looking at my face. I'm going around looking at my reaction to it and crying for myself to go, what? Like, I, you know, just want to pull him out of there and fucking stop it. Right? So, but it went on for a couple of different days. We're in there and that became a porn addiction for later. Okay. And I'm not embarrassed to say really because I know how many fucking people in America are addicted to porn. If you watch it every day or even every week, you got some level of addiction. You know, there's a spectrum for different addictions. And now when I think about it, I go, fuck, one of the worst things we could have ever done as a society, and it just gradually happened, just like everything else does, just like AI, just all the things, the internet, we create it, we can't figure out or agree to how to use it the right way or how to kind of regulate it so it's healthy, right? And then it just explodes into this infinite realm of deviant, dark shit. We all know what's in there. And we can be embarrassed to say like, oh, I can say what's in there. And you go like, wow, you watch it, you know, right? Because if you look at any of those fucking videos and like any of them, there's millions of views, you know? More than the Shawn Ryan show, you know? So I know it's a collective, and it's global at this point. You can just go in there and click, yeah, I'm 18. Some 10-year-old can do that. How soon do they get these things now? They have them when they're children. I know everybody's not going in there and being responsible to like block that stuff. Promise you, they're looking at it and creating these little traumas that they don't even realize. And now we have exploded into this generation, these generations of sexually addicted people. And dude, some of the most brave people I've ever seen doing some shit are like ex-porn stars. This is one guy, I don't remember his name, but he's now an advocate against it and how toxic and terrible it is.
No kidding.
And
I don't know about that.
He's a big Christian. I can't remember his name right now, but he was a very famous porn star. And now imagine that's all recorded. It's all in there. You can always go back to that. So talk about, you know, you do clear some shit, you do heal, you do find a way to move forward, but it's recorded. It's still talk about like your past coming back to haunt you. It's every day for that guy, but he still is telling the truth. And God, that must be, it would be so interesting to talk to him.
I'll find him.
He goes, yeah, he's a big Christian. His family looks amazing and healthy. He's made a decision, you know? But my point back to that is that was one of my traumas, and I always knew it was there and what it was. I just always avoided that it was connected to anything that I was doing, habits-wise or addictions-wise, or, you know, and then we go into a culture like the teams, and, you know, we don't encourage addictions, but it's like, hey, man, it's okay. Like, we're all, it's a safe environment sometimes, you know?
I would say we encourage addictions.
Yeah.
I think that comes, look, maybe things have changed. I remember being shamed
for not drinking.
because I don't want to drink. I remember being told, if you don't drink, we're not going to trust you. I remember being handed sleeping pills and Adderall and opiates and all the shit. You know what I mean? I think that addiction is very much encouraged within the teams. It's just under the radar.
Yeah, it's a secret code thing. And, you know,
They'll blast you for those addictions, and they'll punish you for those addictions.
yeah, then you get a DUI and you're like,
and
fuck,
then
you
they'll
kept me
go
out
and do
drinking.
the exact same fucking thing.
Yeah, so it's a toxic loop. Part of the thing you asked me earlier is what's the solution? I'm like, how do you change culture, you know? Shaming and guilting is not going to change it. So if you have a command or somebody that's like, you know, zero tolerance shit doesn't work, you know? It's just some level of acceptability for the guys that do want to fit in, desperately want to fit in. They have to. That don't want to participate.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.